music fades in and out. For those of us trying to figure out faith in life today, it can feel, well, overwhelming sometimes. What actually makes life feel rich, feel meaningful? There's just so much advice out there, right? How to live, what to chase after. But what if the ability to really love someone, like deeply and selflessly, what if that's not just a feeling or even just a choice we make? What if it's something, I don't know, bigger? Maybe even a supernatural gift. Today in the deep dive, we're digging into a really powerful sermon from Pastor Florin over at Agape Community Church. It's from his series on the letters to the Corinthians, and we're zooming in on 1 Corinthians 13. You probably know it's often called the love chapter.
Yeah, and our goal here is really to go beyond just, hearing a message once on a Sunday.
Yeah.
It's about letting it sink in.
Right.
Actually internalizing it, letting it kind of reshape how we think, how we interact, how we live our lives day to day. We want to explore what it really means to apprentice under Jesus. Because it's not just about believing certain things, is it?
Right.
It's about practicing a whole different way of living. This way of Jesus, it actually offers real hope for dealing with real life stuff.
Okay, so let's get into this. Love being right at the core. Now, 1 Corinthians 13, this famous chapter, it doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. It's actually part of a bigger discussion Paul's having about these gifts of the Spirit. Can you kind of set the stage for us? What were these gifts? Why was he even talking about them?
Absolutely. So Paul's writing to the church in Corinth, and they were kind of struggling with how to use all these different spiritual abilities they had. Things like prophecy, teaching, healing, speaking in different languages. Really extraordinary stuff. And Paul explains these gifts were given by God, number one, to honor God himself, but also for the benefit of everyone in the church, to build them up.
For unity, right?
Exactly. The whole point was unity, trying to prevent divisions, making sure everyone felt like they belonged and could contribute.
And what's so powerful, I think, is what Paul says right in the middle of talking about all these amazing gifts. What's his point about their value without love?
Oh, it's incredibly direct. He says, if I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I'm only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal.
Wow. Just noise?
Just noise. You can sound amazing, even divine, but without love. Meaningless. And he keeps going, if I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, imagine knowing everything.
Yeah.
And if I have a faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. Nothing.
That's stark.
It gets even more intense. He says if you give away literally everything you own, even sacrifice your own body, maybe in martyrdom, but you don't have love, I gain nothing. He wraps it up by calling love the most excellent way. It's the absolute top priority.
It really pushes back against how we naturally think, doesn't it? We tend to value, the big achievements, the visible talents, the impressive knowledge. Why do you think Paul is so insistent that without love, all that amazing stuff just deflates, becomes nothing?
Well, it's like a complete reordering of what matters. You
Yeah.
know? Our default setting is often to look for recognition, right? To measure our worth by what we do or what we know. But Paul's saying, how you do things, the heart behind it, matters more than the accomplishment itself. Without love, even the most incredible acts are kind of hollow. Because the motivation isn't pure. It's not rooted in that selfless divine love. It's not just a nice idea. He's saying it's the essential ingredient, the thing that gives real meaning.
Yeah. Okay, so if love is that essential, what kind of love are we talking about here? Because Pastor Florin, in his sermon, he made this really helpful distinction. It really clicks with our modern way of thinking.
He absolutely did. He talked about two kinds of love we bump into all the time. First, there's what he called transactional love. This is the I love you if kind of love. I love you if you make me feel good, if you do things for me. Very quid pro quo, give and take.
Conditional.
Totally conditional. They use that blunt example. The moment you cross me, we're done. You see that everywhere, right? In movies, relationships, affection is earned, and if you mess up...
And hammer drops, yeah.
Exactly. Pastor Florin didn't shy away from contrasting it either. He even mentioned how some other philosophies, like what's sometimes attributed to the Satanic Bible, explicitly promote only loving those who love you back. He really highlighted how self-serving that is. It's all about what I get out of it, which he pointed out can actually be quite dark, quite self-centered.
Okay, so that's transactional love. What's the alternative? The one Paul describes in 1 Corinthians 13.
That's agape love. And it's a whole different universe. This is selfless love. This is the love that Paul describes. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud.
Wow.
It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. It's basically the opposite of that transactional model in every way.
And one of the biggest takeaways from Pastor Florin, for me anyway, was when he said agape love requires supernatural intervention. He basically argued that we humans, just on our own scheme, we can't actually sustain this kind of love. Why does he think it's beyond
Yeah,
us?
he was really clear on that.
Yeah.
It's not something you can just like grit your teeth and
Yeah.
decide to do perfectly all the time. We might manage kindness here and there, right?
Mhm.
But to consistently be patient, kind, not envious, not boastful, not easily angered, especially when things get tough or someone hurts you.
That's hard.
It's incredibly hard. He argues that takes something beyond our normal human capacity. It needs a divine source, something flowing into us. And that's where his analogy comes in the cream pie and doggy remnant one. It's kind of graphic, but it makes the point so clearly.
Okay, explain that one.
All right, so imagine this amazing, delicious cream pie. Looks perfect. But then someone puts just one tiny, gross, doggy remnant. You know what he means, right on top.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Would you eat it? Of course not. And it doesn't matter how big the pie is. You could have a table-sized pie, a tanker truck full of whipped cream.
Right.
That one tiny impurity spoils the whole thing.
Right, you can't just ignore it.
Exactly. And his point is, it's like that with our good deeds. We can generate a lot of cream pie, do lots of good things, be generous, volunteer. But if those things are done without genuine agape, if they're tainted by that impurity of self-interest or pride or wanting recognition, it doesn't offset the balance, as he put it.
So it's not about just doing more good stuff to cancel out the bad.
No, not in God's economy, according to this. We fundamentally need the love of Christ in order to love like Christ. It's about transformation, not just balancing a scale.
That connects really powerfully to something else. Pastor Florin talked about the struggles people are facing right now. He mentioned the anxiety, the depression, especially among young people, how it's through the roof. How does this message about supernatural love, and especially hope, speak into that reality?
That's such an important link. The sermon tackles this head-on by pointing out that while lots of things we rely on or value will eventually fade, prophecies, speaking in tongues, even our knowledge, Paul says hope endures. He shared that really moving story about his friend John, who passed away after battling a tough disease.
Yeah, I remember that.
John, even in the middle of all that suffering, found incredible hope. His family grieved, obviously, deeply. But Pastor Florin said, we don't grieve without hope. And that hope changes everything about how you walk through something like that. It doesn't erase the pain, but it gives it a different context, a different endpoint.
So the core message for dealing with today's struggles is really about holding on to that promise. Jesus will come through for you. Believing that gives you perspective, right?
Yeah.
That maybe the struggles, the anxieties, they're temporary, that ultimately things can be made right.
Exactly. It provides a kind of solid ground when everything else feels uncertain. Which leads to the practical question, doesn't it? How do we actually grow that kind of hope? Especially when the world seems geared towards crushing it sometimes.
Yeah, how do we cultivate it?
Well, the sermon suggested a couple of things. One was intentionally looking for those glimpses of the hand of God in action, noticing where he's working. Like through sharing prayer requests, he mentioned the prayer wall they have at Agape, where people can literally post needs and pray for each other.
That's cool.
But the really crucial part, he stressed, is cultivating hope in community. It's not something you do alone in a vacuum. We need each other to encourage, to support, to remind each other of that hope.
That makes so much sense. Which brings us back to this idea of apprenticeship under Jesus. It's not just head knowledge. It's about practice, living out this way of Jesus in real, tangible ways. So what does that actually look like day to day?
Right. It's about learning by doing, walking alongside Jesus. Pastor Florin laid out 3 really practical actions that fit perfectly with this apprenticeship idea.
Yeah.
First, he said, is to start a new faith with Jesus. That's the ground floor. It means recognizing, hey, I can't manufacture this agape love myself. It's about consciously taking your life, all of who you are, and saying basically, Lord Jesus, take over, take my life, and you live it through me. It's a kind of surrender that opens you up to that supernatural help we talked about.
Okay, foundation first. What's next?
Second, engage in acts of kindness with humility and selflessness. And this isn't about like doing good deeds through gritted teeth because you feel obligated. He used the example of raking your neighbor's leaves even when your own yard needs work. Doing it not resentfully, but out of a genuine, perhaps even supernatural willingness that comes from a changed heart.
That's a different motivation.
Completely. Pastor Florin said, the more you empty yourself, the more you will receive. It's kind of a paradox, right? But these acts, Done with that humility and selflessness, they become real reflections of God's love, not just, as Paul said, like a clanging cymbal that fades away.
Got it. And the third one?
The third action is to cultivate hope in community. We already touched on this, but it's vital for apprenticeship. Hope is like a muscle, or maybe a plant that needs tending. And the best way, maybe the only way, to really strengthen it is together. Sharing life, the good and the bad, praying together, reminding each other, hey, we need each other. It builds resilience.
Okay, so start faith, act kindly and selflessly, cultivate hope together. This all seems to connect to a bigger idea Pastor Florin brought up from the Bible, from Matthew 6.33, this concept of the kingdom of God. That can sound a bit, I don't know, abstract sometimes. Can you unpack that a bit? What does that mean practically?
Yeah, it's super important, but can definitely sound like church jargon if we're not careful. Basically, when we choose to follow Jesus, Pastor Florin explained it as being adopted into the family of God. But it's even bigger than just a family. He described it as being adopted into a new nation, the nation of God. He said it's a real nation with a specific national heritage and distinct culture.
So it's like having a new citizenship, a new identity.
Exactly, a new way of belonging with its own values and way of life. And this is key. Jesus told his followers to seek first God's kingdom and his righteousness. Why? Because everything else that we might think, do, or say rests on that.
Ah, so it's the foundation for everything else.
Precisely. So these practical steps, we talked about selfless love,
Yeah.
humble kindness, building hope together. That's how we apprentice in the kingdom. That's how we learn to live out the culture of this new nation, God's nation, right here in our everyday lives. It's about making that kingdom culture visible now.
Okay, so wrapping this up, if love, this agape love, never fails, and it really does take something supernatural, a gift, then maybe living it out isn't just about, feeling good or being nice. What if it's actually about participating tangibly in building a different kind of reality right here? A world shaped by this kingdom culture. A place where maybe anxiety and division don't have the last word because hope and selflessness are being actively practiced together in community. What could that look like in your life starting today? If this deep dive into Pastor Florin's sermon, thinking about love and hope and what it means to apprentice under Jesus, if this was helpful for you, please think about subscribing and maybe share it with a friend you think might get something out of this conversation too. Also, you can submit prayer requests online. Just go to our website, agapechurch.life. We have a prayer team there ready to pray specifically for whatever you're going through. And hey, feel free to check out our YouTube channel. It's definitely still a work in progress, but we're working on it. It's getting better. We'd love to see you over there too. Music fades in and out.